Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to translate different sentences that say that something is enough. You're going to see what I mean here in a minute. I'm going to give you some sample sentences. There's a couple of ways to do this in Spanish. Two of the big words we use for that is suficiente and bastante. Today I'm only going to be working with suficiente. I think it's a great word. It's easy to remember. And I'm going to show you some patterns to be able to translate different ways to say enough, but they all follow that same general pattern. As an adult learning a foreign language, you want to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to studying, and learning different patterns that you can apply in different situations, or learning vocabulary you can plug in different situations is the way to go. I don't want to waste your time, so here's a couple of sample sentences of constructions I'll be covering today, so you'll know right away if you want to continue with this lesson. Do you have enough money? ¿Tienes suficiente dinero? Pretty simple, right? Do you have enough money to buy the house? ¿Tienes suficiente dinero para comprar la casa? Did you study enough? ¿Estudiaste lo suficiente? Now, if you're wondering why that lo is there, I'm going to be talking about that in this video. Are you fast enough to beat him? ¿Eres lo suficientemente rápido como para ganarle? Now, if you're wondering why there's a lo here, why it changed into suficientemente, and why there's a como here, you might want to stick around for this lesson. I'm going to start with this one. Suficiente plus noun. Do you have enough money? ¿Tienes suficiente dinero? Pretty easy, right? We're just going to plug our noun right in after it. If you read through the comments, people are like, Paul, you're always bringing up these grammatical terms. Can you try to teach Spanish without it? No, not really. I wasn't into grammatical terms or anything, when I was in school, because I already spoke English. I didn't have to think how things were unless when I was taking a test and somebody was asking me. But when I learned Spanish, then suddenly those things were important. So if I just said, okay, you're going to use suficiente plus a word. You're like, any particular word? A word. I mean, it's not like any word could fit, like a special word. I might call it maybe Bob, I mean, I could make up names for things, but somebody's already done that. They've already broken down grammar into different words, so I'll just use their words. So back to this. Suficiente plus noun. The important thing to know here is that suficiente is an adjective. I know, there's another grammatical term. Jeez. One thing about adjectives in Spanish is that they'll agree in number and gender with the noun that they modify. In this case, we don't have to worry about gender because it ends with an E, suficiente. So all we have to do is determine if it's singular, suficiente, or plural, suficientes. In our last sentence, money is a singular item. We didn't say monies, so it's still in the singular. ¿Tienes suficiente dinero? But take a look at this sentence. Do you have enough strawberries? Strawberries is plural, fresas, so we're going to have to change it to suficientes. ¿Tienes suficientes fresas? This is pretty basic so far, right? That's our first building block. Now, sometimes you want to be able to say, I have enough of something in order to do something else, right? The word we'll be using for this is para, which means for, but it also means in order to. And if you're having trouble with that whole por or para, in this case, anytime you want to say in order to do something, always think para. So take a look at our sample sentence. We have enough money to go on vacation, or to go off on vacation. We're using irse de vacaciones. Tenemos suficiente dinero para irnos de vacaciones. That's pretty easy, right? Now, occasionally, you may see a sentence like this with como right before para. I'm going to talk about it right now because you may see it, and actually a little later in this pattern when our sentences get more complex, you're more likely to see it there. So hey, let's go ahead and break the ice and talk about it. You may see something like, tenemos suficiente dinero como para irnos de vacaciones. When you see sentences like this with suficiente, something be enough, in order to do some verb, I know grammatical terms, some verb, you may see como para or just para. If you're newer to Spanish, my suggestion is to just stick to para, but if you hear somebody use como para or you read it, you're like, I know why that como is there. It's not throwing me off. So let's apply that to this sentence. Do you have enough strawberries to make the dessert? So this could be either, ¿Tienes suficientes fresas para hacer el postre? Or, ¿Tienes suficientes fresas como para hacer el postre? No change in meaning. The como is optional. Here's an important note when using either como para or para in sentences like this, is you're only going to be able to use como para when it's followed by a verb. So think como para plus verb. If it's followed by a noun, just use para. Do you have enough French fries for everybody? ¿Tienes suficientes papas fritas para todos? So again, the easiest thing to do is just use para and not como para, because you will never ever be wrong. Let's go on to the next construction I'm going to show you today, and that's where lo is going to make an appearance. Yes, lo is all through the Spanish language. It pops up everywhere, doesn't it? This is one of those places. So our sample sentence was, did you study enough? Estudiaste lo suficiente. So why is that lo in there? Is that a direct object pronoun thing? Is it, referring to something like if I studied a book or a subject? Do I have to pay attention to gender? Don't overthink this thing. Suficiente is an adjective. Adjectives describe nouns. In this case, we're using a verb. So in order to make suficiente into an adverb, adverbs describe verbs, that lo just appears. Why do they use a lo? I don't know. Again, don't overthink it. If you're describing a verb, get in the habit of dropping in the lo. The nice thing here is it will always be lo suficiente. Never like los suficientes or anything like that. No, lo suficiente, period. Did you eat enough? Comiste lo suficiente? Comiste comes from the verb comer. It's a verb. So how much did you eat? Enough. So we know we're going to be dropping in the lo. That's a pretty simple sentence, right? But let's make it a little bit more complex because, well, that's what we do in these videos. Did you eat enough so you're not hungry later? How are we going to do that? Same way, we're going to be following that pattern. We're either going to drop in para or como para, because we're going to be following it with verbs. Comiste lo suficiente para no tener hambre más tarde? Did you eat enough in order to not have hunger later? Remember, in Spanish, we are not hungry, we have hunger. Tener hambre. Or that sentence could be, comiste lo suficiente como para no tener hambre más tarde? Either one, right? All right, now it's your turn. See if you can translate this one. It's important to sleep enough. It's not too tough, right? Es importante dormir lo suficiente. It's good to know this particular construction, but it does have some limitations. I mean, how many verbs are you saying enough with? You sleep enough, you eat enough. If you say you drink enough, I guess, but if you say you drink enough water, we're back to our first construction. Anyway, it's limited. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the third construction, which is by far the most useful one, and it's going to be lo suficientemente plus adjective or adverb plus como para or para. You shouldn't have any trouble with this because it's basically the same pattern we've been using, with the exception of we changed suficiente into suficientemente. Here's an example of a sentence using that construction. La música estaba lo suficientemente alta como para molestar a los vecinos. The music was loud enough to bother the neighbors. Let's take a look at that sentence. The subject is la música, right? It's a feminine noun. And the adjective we're dropping in after lo suficientemente is alta. It has to agree in number and gender with the subject, right? But you'll notice the lo doesn't change. The suficientemente doesn't change. That is a set construction. You're just going to be dropping in adjectives and adverbs. You grammar buffs out there probably picked up on the fact that suficientemente is an adverb, and you might be wondering, okay, I still see the lo in there, Paul. Why is the lo still there? Well, actually, in sentences like this, sometimes you will not see the lo added, but I don't suggest you follow that pattern as a non-native speaker. If you're not keeping the lo in there, your sentences will likely sound wrong to some native speakers, and they may be like, oh, it's lo suficientemente. So to avoid that problem, just keep the lo in there and learn the construction exactly this way. Lo suficientemente, whatever your adjective and adverb is, and then you have como para or para when it's followed by a verb, or just para when it's followed by a noun. Let's look at a few more examples. I need a backpack big enough to carry all my books. Necesito una mochila lo suficientemente grande como para llevar todos mis libros, or para llevar todos mis libros. You have the choice there of como para or para because llevar is a verb. But if it was a noun, again, just stick to para. The car is not big enough for the whole family. El coche no es lo suficientemente grande para toda la familia. As you can see with those examples, this construction works great with adjectives, but it also works with adverbs. One of the most useful ones is going to be bien, as in to do something well enough. Después de vivir en México durante un año, Juan habla español lo suficientemente bien como para comprender los acentos regionales. After living in Mexico for a year, Juan speaks Spanish well enough to understand the regional accents. Aunque no es chef profesional, María cocina lo suficientemente bien como para sorprender a sus invitados con platos deliciosos. Although, I'm competing with birds today. A very noisy bird. Although Maria is not a professional chef, she cooks well enough to surprise her guests with delicious dishes. With this construction, you can talk about so many different things. So I encourage you to, practice using it. Drop in different adjectives and different adverbs and start building your own sentences. And that's what I want you to do. I don't want you to just watch this video and be like, oh, Paul covered some stuff about Suficiente or something. I don't know. It was all right. This video was okay. Practice. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.